G'day there, everyone. Thanks for joining me again here at the kitchen table on Freethinkradio.com. This week, my guests were Michael and Zac, creators of the Canadian Love Project, which is not as kinky as it might sound, although it does feature a man in a toga. And this is episode 5 in the Canucks at the Kitchen Table series, which is a thing I've started where I send unsolicited emails to independent Canadian YouTubers and podcasters who do political, cultural commentary and ask them to come take some time to talk to me about what it is that they do and why it is they do it. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can find all of the past episodes of this Canucks at the Kitchen Table on the Freethink Radio YouTube channel, and you can catch the new episodes here on freethinkradio.com every Monday at 7. So before we get into it, please do stick around tonight for Time for the Show at 10 o'clock and get your weekly dose of show in your life. Check back Tuesdays at 10 for Share a Slice, Wednesdays at 10 for The Short Bus, live with Doc Ellis and myself. And keep an eye on our YouTube channel as well for weekly live streams where Doc Ellis will solve all the problems of the people of Reddit. And I also want to let you guys know about The Pale Horse, which is the Freethink Radio Collaborative zine, published on an irregular basis and available in random public spaces, but also available to you at an address of your choosing. So just check out the Freethink Radio Patreon page to find out how to make that happen. And of course, you can find all about these things and more than you wanted to know even maybe, by following us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, MeWe, join our Discord, all the usual places you can find us. And now, without further ado, here is my chat with Michael and Zac. Enjoy. All right, so Michael and Zac, thank you so much for joining me at the kitchen table. I really appreciate it.
Martha, thank you so much for having us to your kitchen table. We are very excited to be here at this kitchen table. I really like the metaphor, by the way, of the kitchen table. It's pretty fun.
Thanks. Yeah, it's I can't actually take credit for it. It was a friend of mine who came up with the name, but it suits the vibe I was going for, so I'm pretty happy with it. But yeah, let's talk more about your and Zac's project, the Canadian Love Project. If I have that correct? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, that is the title of our series that we're going with.
So what brought you two together to start that project? What's the backstory and what was the motivation?
Well, back in the day, I made a short film, or I was auditioning for a short film, and
you were holding auditions for the short film you were making.
Yes, that's a better way to put it. And although it didn't turn out, Michael auditioned and ripped his pants off for me.
That sounds strange, but I have multiple pairs of tearaway pants, and in high school I would rip them off in the hallways to get a laugh out of people and to throw my pants at people. And so then when I got Zac's character breakdown, I was like, oh, this sounds like me in high school. I should bring my tearaways and rip them off as part of the shtick. So I did. And
the short film didn't get made, and we never talked again until we were both at a comic convention. Michael was promoting his web series Pirate Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like that shameless little plug for you?
That was a great plug. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And he asked us me and my girlfriend were doing a photo booth, and he was like, oh, do you guys do video? I was like, I mean, we can. And then he wanted to do a promo for Pirate Mike, and we did that. And then he was like, oh, another person dropped out of this other project I'm working on. Do you maybe want to produce it? And we were like, sure, why not? And then we came on, and that's how I was brought onto it.
And let's be honest, I am not a producer, so this would not be off the ground without Zac and Lily. So they do everything. And then from my side, I really like interviewing people. Like when I go to parties, if you put me near someone for long enough, I'll start asking them questions and following emotional responses to try to figure out, where their passion is, and they're running jokes in some of my high school friend groups that like, we go to a party. All right, Michael, how many life stories did you collect? Because because I just really, really like getting into people's emotions and stories and what they've lived and what excites them. I really like that. So I've had a bunch of different concepts for interview shows that I've really wanted to do. I did, for a brief period of time, I did a show called Let's Talk About Feels, where people would phone in and I would sit there and talk to them about their emotions. That was really fun.
That's amazing. Was that like an online call-in show?
Yeah, it was. We meant to release it as a podcast. I found some producing partners who just got busy with other things and were like, "Here, Mike, here are the files. You can do whatever you want." And then we fell into that thing where I love talking to people, but I'm not great at doing anything else really. So. Yeah. So then it never became a podcast and it sort of stopped happening. I don't know, maybe I'll bring it back someday. But it was just like, I would just be sitting, we were releasing them on YouTube and we would have their audio as they talked to me on the phone while I was sort of sitting there listening to it and talking back to them. It was more suited for podcasting, but I never got my, can we swear?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Never got my shit together, and that's been a running theme is that Zach and Lily are really good at getting the shit together, and I'm really not. So that's
You're a good match.
Yeah. Oh, actually, yeah. But yeah, so then so I'd done these shows, and I wanted to do something that would help our current political situation, and I was looking around and I was really worried about our current political situation, and I was reading a lot of articles about what happened in the States, and a big thing is that part of the way that we ended up with Donald Trump as an American president is that he really isolated his followers from the Democrat followers, and so it was sort of on both sides. A really big divide was set up between the two camps until they just weren't talking to each other. So, the left was shocked when Trump won because they didn't talk to the right. They refused to talk to the right. So they didn't even realize that Trump was doing so well. And the right would believe anything that Trump said because they didn't talk to the left, because the left thought they were all bigots, so the left wouldn't talk to them. And that it was sort of the divide between the right and left that led to, maybe not the most ideal American president, in my opinion. So, I was thinking about, I want to do a show, I want to do something that's going to help Canada, and it occurred to me that, I'm good at getting to the human side of things. What if we took people who disagree politically, and then I try to unpack them into the human side, so that people who disagree and traditionally wouldn't talk to each other about politics
project, and I think
start
you
to
made a lot of
understand
great
each other,
points,
and then we
it's something
can
that
maybe
I've
have a more positive
already
political
heard
dialogue
from a few
going,
of the guests
so that the two
I've had
sides
on
can
in
actually
this
talk to each
somewhat
other. And
similar kitchen
I
table
think that's
series is that the echo chambers and the divisions that have been
a democracy
propagated
is very
in politics,
easy to manipulate,
maybe since even
when
before
people
the
who disagree
Trump
do
election
not
have
talk
really
to each other.
Become
So I
more and
think
more entrenched.
It's
and
really
it's
important
really
for
not doing
Canadians
anybody
to
any
sort of
favors.
take back our
100%.
political
Totally
power
agree with that.
by
I'm glad it's not
talking
just
about
us that
politics
are,
more,
that are
even with
thinking
people
that.
we disagree
And
with.
it's funny because
learning
when
it's become such a taboo discussion. Nobody talks
when
about
I
it.
manage to
I post
occasionally get my
articles
shit
and I have
together.
friends on the right
I share them with
and
my
left,
friends.
and people are like, and
all
I have
cap,
some
like,
friends, I have 3 comments in. They're
right-leaning
it
friends.
just degrades, and I have some left-leaning
slurs
friends who are
and it's ridiculous, and it's
so
like, why
passionate about.
Remember that
the
thing
fact
when
that
you
they
disagree
are
with someone
protecting
and you talk to them
in the
nicely and you
environment,
sort of
that they
figure out each other's
need to stand
perspectives
up and be
both come
angry
away
about
a little smarter?
about
why can't we
the
do that
obstruction
anymore?
of equality.
So this show is an attempt
and are
to,
just
ruthlessly
to do that,
horrible
basically.
to my
get
friends
into
on the right.
why people believe
Yeah.
what they believe,
are not
so that
bad
hopefully
people. They just
people
have
on the right
been,
will watch, people on the
you
left
know,
will
led
watch,
to believe different
and both
things.
sides will.
And so it's funny because
be
I
able to
started
understand the other
out
side.
Sort of thinking, all right,
and
I'm
you know,
get
and with that,
I'm
not
gonna,
just right and
you
left.
know,
We
we'll get
also,
some people on from the
you know,
right.
we
We'll unpack
spoke
them,
to
and
someone
then
on
we'll
the
get a bunch
right.
of
He
people
was
on the
talking
left, and
about
hopefully
illegal
we'll hook
immigrants
the
and
people
refugees
from the right,
and
by having one of
you know,
theirs.
and now
then
we're
they'll
trying to
have
find
see all of
someone
our
who
people on the left
came over as a
and thus,
refugee or
you know, the
or
leftist
new and
argument,
illegal
which is
immigrant,
much
to sort
superior,
of tell that side
will
of the
thus
story. Be propagated.
It's sort of investigative,
and,
in a
and
way,
I'm
where
realizing
we're,
that
you know,
both sides
there's an
need
issue
to
or a
listen to
topic,
each other, and both
and
sides
we try to just
need to
hear
try to
everybody's
understand each other
thoughts
and
on this,
you
to
know,
get to the bottom of what's really there.
And one of the things, I mean, I think you touched on it a little bit, but one of the things that I found most discouraging is, like you said, just how quick people can be to demonize the opposite side of defense. And I think any way that you can kind of hook people into having to consider not just the arguments of the other side, but just their basic humanity, and see that the commonalities and the common causes that everybody shares is really being lost in all of the outrage these days.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, I believe quite strongly that the outrage really doesn't help, and people think it helps because it feels like you're doing something, but it's actually, it's alienating the other side because nobody likes to have people angry at them, and the only way to actually move forwards is to bring on the other side. Like if I can dive into this for a second,
Absolutely, yeah.
It's we have this metaphor that it's almost a running joke because I bring it up so much, but basically, it comes from history. It comes from what the British Empire did in India, and what the Roman Empire did to become so successful. And what the British Empire did is they realized that India was too powerful to just take them on in a military way. So they sort of set themselves up as traders and consultants, and then started getting the different kingdoms and factions and peoples to fight each other. And by the end of it, India was a mess, and England was able to sort of walk in and say, hey, look, we're saving you because you guys are a mess. But they were a mess because agents of the British Empire had been creating conflicts. And I really think that, you know, even with the right and left, if there are systems in power that are being held in place by people who benefit from those systems, and they start getting worried, like, wow, what if people actually make a difference and change the system? All they have to do is sow discord between the humans that want to make change, and the movement falls apart. As opposed to the Roman Empire, who, when they found someone that, you know, that they would be in conflict with, as soon as they would win, as soon as they would win just enough to be able to take some slaves, they'd go, hey, listen, your culture is really great. You know, we're going to take some of you as slaves, but we're also going to, you know, we're going to trade with you. We're going to absorb you. We would love you to be part of our empire. Like, they did it through slavery and murder. I'm not saying the Roman Empire was great, but their technique was super effective of, oh, you disagree with us? You don't think we should have this land? You know, we're just going to be really loving to you and try to welcome you onto our side, and eventually this land will be ours because now you're part of the Roman Empire. And essentially by trying to get the other team onto your banner, that's how you win. So if you have a room full of feminists that are getting outraged at men, they're not going to go anywhere because they're already feminists, and what they need is for those men that they're getting outraged, or let's say misogynists, they're already feminists. What they need is for the misogynists to become feminists. That's how they win, is to get everyone to be feminists. And when you are outraged at someone, they don't want to join your banner. So all of this outrage is pushing people further away and really not helping move forward people's goals. It's like if you're an environmentalist and you're trying to fight massive corporations, that one's a bit different, because I think part of it is letting the basic people know that massive corporations are doing horrible things. But but if you're against people who drive cars, and that's like, it's very much you versus people who drive cars. The way to win is to get them to stop driving cars. The way to win is to get them to believe what you believe and pull them under your banner. And the way to invite someone into your banner is not to stand on a soapbox and yell at them that they're horrible. Nobody wants to join the banner that stands there and yells at them that they're horrible. The way to get them on under your banner is to say, hey, we really appreciate you and what you have to offer. Here is why our goals are helping you as well. You like air, huh? Good, yeah. Want to come and breathe better air with us? Great. It would help you if you didn't drive as much. Isn't that great? And and by welcoming people in and appreciating them even when you disagree with them, that's how you get an agenda to move forwards. Not by yelling at them, not by getting angry.
Yeah. I agree, because when you are coming from that confrontational stance and that outrage place, all you're really invoking in other people who oppose you, I guess, is a sense of defensiveness. And you haven't really accomplished anything, but because you had an outlet for that outrage, you have this kind of emotional release that tricks you into thinking you've made some kind of impact, when really maybe all you've done is redraw the lines.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. And I've noticed, I do that in my brain sometimes with my to-do list, where I'll be like, oh, I really need to do that thing. And then I'll sort of fantasize about doing it, and I'll picture how well it will go. Yeah. And then my brain's like, okay, great. Well, we can check that off the to-do list. And then 2 weeks later, I haven't touched it, because I fantasized about it enough that my brain was like, okay, yeah, we've handled it. We're good.
Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. We thought of that through. We thought it right through.
Yeah. Michael, have you done your taxes? Yeah, of course. Okay. Why aren't they done? Oh, yeah. Right. So I fantasized about doing my taxes, and then I just sort of assumed they were done. Sorry. But it's that same thing where, you want to get something done, so you do something that gives you the emotional response of, yeah, I got something done here, and then you feel great, but you haven't actually done the thing. And right. I definitely agree that is a little bit of what outrage culture is, you're feeling like you're helping things because you're standing and yelling and getting angry and passionate, and it feels great, but you haven't actually helped the situation. And part of that, the other part of it that we've noticed is that, I'm sorry, I'm really blasting into this. I apologize. Zach's
No, not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, another thing that we've definitely noticed is that, our outrage is on both sides, but tends to be more on the left. But there's a different form of it on the right, where it's like it's blaming. So that's what happens on the left. What happens on the right is that there are legitimate human concerns, but then the people, sort of the talking heads of the right movement, give those concerns a blaming point or something to be afraid of, and then the right sort of focuses on that instead of the real issues, which I think is a bait and switch tactic by the powers of the right. But that's, I'm approaching that from a leftist perspective. But, I've noticed that, for example, with immigration, a lot we interviewed a kid wearing a MAGA hat, and he was talking about how immigration, we're kind of against it, and we started unpacking as to why that is, and we realized that his issue that he cared about was, or that he had sort of been taught to care about, was that we still have homeless in Canada, we still have veterans in Canada, we still have people in Canada that need help.
Yeah.
So he and people who believe what he believes are worried that we're giving help to immigrants instead of Canadians.
Right.
But the thing is that at the root of that is a guy who cares about Canadian homeless people and Canadian veterans. That's a good person. That is a person who cares about other people.
Yeah.
So you know, like at the bottom of that is a legitimate concern and a caring concern, but then they are given this story over top of it and distracted by it of, well, it's the immigrants' fault. Why aren't we taking care of the homeless? Is it because of large corporations and the really rich and not a lot of taxes or welfare or social? No, it's because immigrants. So then, you know, then they focus on this distraction tactic that has been given to them, and everyone says, oh, well, you're a terrible person. And they say, we're not terrible people. How dare you? And then this conflict ensues because they've been distracted from their actual issue, which is we should help our homeless and our veterans more in this country.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really good segue into another thing I wanted to ask your opinion about, is just how useful or accurate you've found, especially since you've started this project, the traditional left-right political paradigm to be. Because another thing I've found myself, and also talking to people on the podcast here, is that a lot of people feel very politically isolated, and more so as the last couple years have gone on, and that no real or no traditional political labels really fit anymore, or are really useful, I guess, and especially like what you're saying, are really being used more as distractions and tools of division in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree that the labels of right and left are conducive to writing someone off. You know, I mean, we label things so that it's easier to not have the same discussion every time. It's like on Google Maps.
Right.
I label Zach's house so that I don't have to remember his address every time I drive there. But so it's faster, it's easier, but and you know, there's some use to that. But definitely it lends itself to identity politics, where you're believing what someone says because they said it and they're under the same label as you. And that leads to sort of lazy thinking and just accepting what the powers that be want you to believe, and that makes you very easy to manipulate. So I definitely agree that that's a problem, and that it I think the issue for me is identity politics and people, you know, being like, well, I don't really believe this, but I'm right, so I'll believe it because that's what the right says. And I definitely would agree that those labels are no longer as useful. And I think part of the problem is the strictness of how we perceive them and the emotions behind how we perceive them. You know, if you are a left-leaning person and someone says I'm right-wing, you know, people will shut down and walk to the other corner of the room to not talk to each other. So
I think there's still a lot of assumptions that come with labels like liberal and conservative or left or right that don't really hold water anymore. Like I'm thinking a lot of maybe, I guess, with a bit of the rise of libertarianism and the Green Party and all kinds of kind of newer or non-establishment movements, that a lot of times people are shut down as kind of left or right, but not accurately. Like, for example, you know, you may say, well, I'm an environmentalist and I'm in favor of increasing environmental policies and then automatically being labeled as some kind of extreme lefty, when really they could also hold lots of opinions that might be classified as right-wing. And that this kind of growing binary and opposition between the two is really missing a lot of the common ground and also a lot of the nuance that real people in real life actually have.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and one that I don't know if I've thought about enough. I don't know, Zach, maybe you have, but I haven't. I think because people are so nuanced and people do have so much, but we become more easily manipulated when we subscribe to an identity for our politics. So maybe that's the way forward, is to try to get people to escape the left and right and seeing each other as left and right and actually talking about each other's beliefs. Because, I mean, it makes me think of politics in Germany, where they have electoral reform and they have like a bunch of political parties, and each one is a slightly nuanced variation of the next, but that means that people are actually have options available to them of what they believe should happen. So I think that's the right direction for politics to go, is for people to stop worrying about right and left and stop trying to find a hive mind identity to associate with so that they don't have to think, and actually discuss politics and actually figure out what they believe and find people who they disagree with and can talk to, but also find the people that have a similar set to them, and then that becomes the next sort of, the environmentalist libertarian movement or something. So I do think that, I really like labels are useful. They help us navigate things quickly, but the labels that we have become problematic. Left and right is now way too simplistic for the complicated beliefs Canadians have, and also they've become divisive, and that's not helpful to anyone. So I would definitely agree with that. I want to hear a little more about what your voters are feeling, or people are feeling politically isolated. I'm curious about what you've been reading from that, what you've been getting from people about this.
Well, actually, a lot of it comes from talking to people who I guess would have considered themselves to be more right-wing, or on the kind of anti-progressive, I guess, side of the fence. Mm-hmm. And starting to see, I guess, a growing amount of identity politics from that kind of sphere, especially online. A growing amount of, I think we kind of touched on this briefly earlier, like a growing amount of phonies being exposed, people who are just capitalizing on the trends and the outrage, and who are really just exploiting those situations for their own, monetary or online presence, and it's left people feeling, I guess politically homeless in a sense, in some ways, but also
politically
I think that,
homeless. That is such a great concept. I definitely do you mind if Canadian Love makes use of that? Because
No, not at all. I'm honored.
Thank you, Martha. That's great.
But also on the left, the last episode I did was with the hosts of a podcast called Out of Left Field. They're a self-described socialists politically, and even they kind of alluded to the idea that they don't feel accurately or adequately represented by how you see the left wing in popular media, which tends to focus, only on the most inflammatory or most sensationalist topics or events. Yeah. And so even they were saying, it's there's a popular conception of what a socialist or socialism is, and then there's actual people in their day-to-day lives with those politics, and it's a growing disparity between the two.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, that's very interesting because I know I have some friends on the left who, if they thought that they were, being led by a media that was taking advantage of things, would have a crisis of faith because they believe that everything they do and say is for the greater good. So that's very interesting to me that this group that is trying very hard to walk the walk is noticing a disparity on the left as well between between what actually helps humans and the hot buzz, hot topic issues. So that's really interesting to me that there's that disparity as well. Yeah. I wanted to share a funny, well, frankly, it's just a joke, but I remember seeing this guy, and this is I thought of this when you mentioned the environmentalist libertarian, because I saw this right-wing pundit, and maybe we should change those words. I saw this conservative valued, anti-socialist, anti-communist pundit standing on a soapbox talking about the environmental movement. And he said the greatest thing that I've ever heard, because it's hilarious. He says, environmentalists are like watermelons. On the outside, they may look green, but on the inside, they're communist red. And it was so funny to me. But I think this is exactly that of what you're talking about. Of people are like, oh yeah, I see you bike to work, huh? Yeah. Do you hate me for being a white man?
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you that identity politics is something that we need to leave behind, or at least redefine and reevaluate. I don't know how we're going to make Canada do that or help Canada do that, but I do think I really agree with you that that's where the solution lies.
Yeah, well, I saw in one of your videos, you actually had a really nice analogy, I thought, for the kind of problem we're describing, and your analogy was with the two icebergs. I think this was kind of a follow-up to the interview you did with the gentleman who described himself as alt-right. And I thought that was very well put, and it was a really nice analogy for, like we've been saying, the kind of clash that you have with identity politics when people are dismissive or not really understanding each other, but then what's underneath and what fuels those things are actually much greater, more significant pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But I guess the question still remains, and not that I expect an answer to this on the spot, but how do you move an iceberg, right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of icebergs, just button iceberg heads. And well, and I mean, that's like, poor Zach, I have a crisis of faith about weekly, where I go, are we doing the right thing? Is this going to make a difference? Why isn't anybody subscribing to our channel today? What are we doing with our lives?
That's common to everyone who has a website or a YouTube channel, I'm sure.
Oh, is it? Okay, good.
Probably.
I'm glad it's not just me. But yeah, like I have a crisis of faith all the time. But what our show is trying to do is exactly that, where we take these individual icebergs of, I'm alt-right, or I'm the First Nations two-spirited woman. We take these icebergs that are the label at the top, and then we take our cameras and we go and we dive under the water and we look at the bottom of the iceberg, and we see the part that's a caring father or a very sad whatever. Like we see. We see the bottom of the iceberg. So we are trying to do that with this show. Afterwards, maybe not on your podcast, but afterwards, if you have feedback for us on how to do it better, I'm always looking for that. But that is what we're trying to do is sort of take these icebergs and showcase the bottom so that the next time someone is in a conversation and Jerry says, "Oh yeah, I associate with the alt-right movement," instead of it becoming, the loss of a friendship, it can become an interesting discussion where they say, "Oh really? I heard someone alt-right get interviewed about this. You believe this? Is it also for that reason?" And then it's positive discussions instead of So so that's our hope.
So I guess moving to slightly less deep waters, I wanted to ask just about what your experience has been like for both of you so far, because going through your channel, I saw that you've done a lot of work on the ground, like at the 420 rally and some of the Queen's Park protests. So, and you've talked to a lot of people already, even though you're a fairly new channel. So I wanted to ask what it's been like getting out there on the ground, and if there's any kind of crazy awesome or just plain crazy moments that stand out, and just what that experience has been like.
Wow. I mean, Zach, do you want to go first or should I?
I think it's just crazy how many different views there can be under the same umbrella. Like, we'll talk to one person that doesn't necessarily hate the gays on the right, and then we talked to a woman who was just she seemed like a normal person, and then was like, "But them homos."
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, actually. Sadly she had to go right after that, but it was she was telling us about a really interesting thing where, Rob Ford, as the mayor, she was working for him. She was a recent Ukrainian immigrant. She was working for him in the housing department, and apparently he was trying very hard to clean up corruption so that the money that went for housing would actually go to people's housing, which is kind of a really positive thing. And I was like, what?
Absolutely.
Rob Ford fighting for the little guy? What is this?
You mean this Rob Ford? Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Or it was the mayor though. It was Rob, not Doug. It was back in the day. Yeah. But she's telling us this, and I'm like, wow, this is an example of a conservative with conservative values actually really trying to help people. And then she was like, yeah, but he had a lot of trouble, especially from those gays. But they were. And we were like, oh, okay, the gays were giving him trouble? And she was like, yeah, well, he was opposing them on their marriage and stuff, so they were probably opposing him as well. And we were like, if you oppose someone, they'll generally oppose you back. And she was like, yeah, it's disgusting how they carry on in public. They're setting a bad example for children. And we were all sort of, just not sure of my fault. Okay, brain. We need a follow-up question.
Quickly.
And then she was like, well, I got to get going. This has been great. And she wandered off. And we were sort of like, what happened?
Yeah.
And it was so fascinating that someone with conservative values who was fighting for the little guy and taking corruption out of the housing system also was extremely homophobic. It's just nuts. It's just mind-blowing. We've got our nice, quiet, sit-down interviews, and those are pretty fun. But then we've got our events that are just wild, where we're going from person to person, and our other camera person, Siobhan, is off in the crowd getting B-roll of the parade while we try to find as many people to talk. Like at Pride, we had naked people, and we had all kinds of humans, and it's been very interesting, but it's also been very crazy. And I think the biggest thing is that you think you know and like someone, and then you spend 4 to 8 hours with them in a day, and you're like, okay, I now know these things about you, and you know these things about me that we're going to have to work out. and then you work those out, and then you spend 4 to 6 to 12 hours together every day for like 3 weeks, and then it's like, wow, okay, so like our dynamic as a team has been shifted, has been strained. Like we spend an insane amount of time together, and like I don't know, there's probably nobody who currently knows who I currently am better than Zac, Lily, and Savon right now, because we spend that much time together, and that is at times really challenging. I think especially for them, because I've got a lot of foibles. But so a big part of it has just been like, 3 random humans, all 4 of you believe in kind of the same thing and kind of like each other, and then you embark on this insane journey, and 2 months later you're like, oh, the things we've done to each other, the things we've seen, like, yeah. So that's been really interesting.
So has the response been generally good when you go out on the ground? Like, do you find people are generally happy to talk to you, or have you had any kind of resistance or blowback for what you're doing?
I mean, there's always the people that just don't want to talk to us. Michael being a strange man in a toga can sometimes be off-putting.
We're going to get to the toga, don't worry.
I mean, I definitely, when we went to Ford Fest, they were...
Oh, yeah, Ford Fest.
Yeah, they were worried about us being sort of leftist media, so they said we had to leave because we weren't accredited media, like we weren't the CBC, which in a way makes sense. Like, we didn't have a CBC media pass, but we were also there to lovingly help them tell their stories and be understood. Yeah. So we understood where they were coming from, but at the same time, they were really, I mean, not that we have a huge viewing base yet, but they were kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Here was a team ready to help lovingly tell their stories, but because they were afraid that we were the angry leftist media, they made sure that they stuck to the books and got us kicked out. And then we interviewed people in the parking lot, so we had a great time, and they couldn't stop us because it was a parking lot. So that was that was really enjoyable for me to watch them watching us and know that they wanted to stop us from interviewing people in the parking lot but couldn't. Definitely had some very petty joy from that experience.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
a bit discouraging to hear, though, especially considering, whether it's well earned or not. It seems that the right generally has a reputation for being more inviting to independent media. But, there was another thing I was going to ask following up to that. Oh, yes, but it's not uncommon because actually, as I was saying before, last week I had Ben and Mac, some self-avowed socialists on, and because previously in the series I've mostly have spoken with more fringe or anti-progressive guests, even they were a little bit worried to come on the podcast, if it was going to be, like a confrontation or a kind of trap of some kind. And it's sad. I mean, that's it's kind of a sad statement, about people's levels of trust right now in general.
Well, yeah, and I think that's exactly what shows like yours and shows like ours are trying to combat is, people go in worried that they're going to be made to look bad and that it's a very fearful experience. And, we just want to be really loving and really try to understand people without as much judgment. And honestly, we sometimes, because again, most of my friends are from the left, sometimes I get in trouble with them that I'm not as judgmental when like, why didn't you tell me he was wrong about that? And why didn't you tell her that that's a horrible thing to say? But like we've gotten in trouble for being loving instead of judgmental. But I think the way forwards, as you're sort of suggesting here, is to interview people lovingly so that they feel more free about talking. Because it's only, if you ask someone who's sort of fringe right what they believe about immigrants, they're going to be like, all right, here we go. I'll put my fighting gloves on. All right, immigrant. And then it's only when they feel comfortable and supported that they're able to say things about how they actually feel, which is, I really worry about Canadian homeless people. And, and I'm not opposed to helping immigrants. I just want to make sure that we help our homeless people. And it's only when they feel, loved enough to be vulnerable that they get there. That being said, I think to answer your question a little more, the people we actually interview, for the most part, we try really hard to be loving and to be non-judgmental and to understand them. And our response is pretty good because people like to be understood. People like to be listened to lovingly. So, in terms of the response of people who we interview, there are times when I can't keep the judgment out of my voice, and then I feel really bad afterwards because I can see on their face that they feel that they were being judged or betrayed in some way. I'm not perfect, but I'm getting better at that. But overall, overall people just really want to be listened to and understood. And that's what we try to do, is listen and understand people and not judge them. So the response has been pretty good from people we interview.
Excellent. Well, that must be excuse me, that must be encouraging. And from what I've seen on your channel too, it seems like, especially with your one-on-one interviews, seems quite well received on both sides. So I'd say you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Martha. I mean, we're trying. We're trying very hard to treat everyone lovingly, and I mean, really, the phrase that comes to my mind a lot is that we're all humans, and almost all humans are good and want the best for the world and have concerns that they feel are legitimate. Nobody thinks of themselves as a bad guy. That's why the Marvel movie was so brilliant, is that Thanos didn't think of himself as a bad guy. He thought of himself as a savior. That's what made him such a real villain. Because in real life, very few people think of themselves as bad. So if they're not bad, if they're good people, then number one, when we're talking to them about their views, we should treat them that way. We should treat them like they're a good human who just has different views than us. And number two, if they're not a bad person and they believe something that we perceive as bad, clearly there's just something that's not being understood here. Maybe there's something about our perspective they don't understand. Maybe there's something about their perspective we don't understand. But it's not an issue of we are good and they are bad, because nobody's bad. So it comes down to an issue of what is actually true. And I mean, I'm not entirely sure where this series is going to go direction-wise. I want to continue interviewing Canadians and maybe get into politicians as we approach the election.
Yeah.
But I eventually see us as sort of an investigative thing where, for example, the immigration issue, our friend who's more right-leaning had a statistic that he believed to be factual, that I think it was 70% of illegal immigrants are not actually running from horrible situations, are actually quite rich and just gaming the system.
Right.
And, and if that's the case, then that's something that the government really should address, because the money that is going towards helping these immigrants should be going towards helping the ones who are actually in need of it and not the ones who are gaming the system. So as a perspective, that makes sense. But then, our people on the left who saw that were like, well, that statistic is obviously made up and that's wrong, and here's all the reasons why this person is wrong. So, it makes me want to put a more investigative spin and go out there and find out what's actually true. Because, both sides think that they are right based on assumptions that they believe to be true based on their sources of information.
Right.
Clearly, someone's being lied to because otherwise they'd agree. So I think eventually what we want to do is put on our investigative hats and dive down into these issues and figure out, okay, what percentage of this actually is it? What is this actually like? What is actually happening here? And sort of investigate that way so that we can get to a place where we can say, hey, right wing, we love you. Here's what you believe. Well, here's what we found out. Hey, left wing, we love you. Here's what you believe. Well, here's what we actually found out. And try to get more of a consensus. But I do think that the first step is understanding those perspectives. So right now we're still on that step.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting, actually, that you're thinking of going in that direction with things. And I think that would be a really useful and practical service to have out there, too. The more the better in that regard. But thinking of what you were saying, too, I mean, I also kind of just miss, and maybe, I don't know, maybe this is more specific to my own experience, but I kind of miss the idea that people can have even heated or passionate debates and then have a beer afterwards. You know? It's almost, and this was a topic that actually came up with a guest of mine when I first started the podcast, almost over a year ago now, who was talking about a decline or a lack of the ethic of sportsmanship in debate and in political spheres, that everyone, and that you can have these kind of almost competitive discussions, but to remember that ethic of good sportsmanship, where you extend to your competitor a sense of respect and kind of their best intentions and everything. You give them the benefit of the doubt and kind of proceed on equal grounds and not, and keep it in a certain sphere of debate that doesn't cross over into the personal and the personal attacks.
Yeah, 100% believe that and agree with that. Another direction that I've thought about moving, we just need to find someone to help us plan it. We're looking because we're pretty busy doing stuff. But, I would love to host debates where we get a room full of people who are diametrically opposed in their views on a specific issue and invite people to debate, but with me in the middle, just making sure everything is really loving and making sure people see the bottom of the iceberg, so to speak. So, because I entirely agree with what you're saying. I remember there was this thing, I don't know, I think I saw, it was one of those Facebook documentary videos, but it was or maybe I just looked in, I don't know. There was this really big debate that was seen as a massive political struggle between a right-leaning and a left-leaning American. This is, I don't know, in the 50s or 60s or something, and it was this massive debate. There was a series of debates, and a lot of America that had enough money to be tuned in to politics, because it's hard to care about politics when you're just trying to make your life work. But a lot of America that had enough money to be tuned into politics were just on the edge of their seats watching this debate, and and it was these two sort of gentlemanly dudes who would agree with each other, who would disagree with each other really, really strongly, but in a really polite, kind, and respectful way every time. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with being polite, kind, and loving when you disagree with someone?
Well, and that actually is another kind of good lead into another question I wanted to ask you guys, is how you kind of assess the online commentary sphere, because I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but there was kind of a flash in the pan fad maybe a year ago on YouTube, especially in kind of commentary culture wars, commentator spheres, with the kind of debate show setting, but done in the opposite regard of what you've described, and just designed to be the most kind of brutal, gloves off debate style you can have. And as you probably imagine, it didn't last long. It kind of quickly imploded on itself.
Sure. Yeah.
But and I don't know if how closely you guys kind of follow other, what goes on in the so-called culture wars online or meme wars, however you want to put it. But yeah, just if you do, what you kind of make of it, and if you don't, maybe why not? Or
I mean, yeah, that sounds really interesting. We should probably investigate the meme wars a little bit. I mean, up till this point, we've really been interested in, Canadians, the actual humans, what they believe, why they believe it. We haven't really gotten into the comment war, meme war stuff yet. I don't know if that's something we should address. I know that in terms of our brand, like our brand is that we love everyone, and that if we disagree with you, we'll still love you, and we'll still interview you and try to understand why you believe what you believe. But we're always loving is the brand we're trying to have. And, if somebody comments, hey, you guys are real dicks, here's why, our response would be, you know what, thank you very much for reaching out to us about this. That takes effort. We appreciate you reaching out. We don't feel that we are dicks, but we see that you're bringing up this point, and that's really interesting. I mean, we felt that your point is not true because of these reasons, but maybe we're not getting something. Like, tell us more about your perspective, and it's I've found that that's really good, because when someone is commenting, you guys are dicks and I hate your show, what they're saying is something in this show didn't resonate with me. And that's interesting, because that's an opinion. That is something that they are feeling or thinking. And, as a team that just seeks to understand why people think and feel what they think and feel, to us, that's an opportunity to engage with them and try to figure out why they're thinking and feeling that. So, one time I wrote this comedic web series called #OfficeLife about my time in a call center. And we filmed this one scene where the beleaguered middle management needs to do something to re-engage her employees, and she comes up with this. She gives them a ton of coffee and comes up with this slogan: "Every conflict is an opportunity," which is ridiculous, because you're asking these poor call center representatives to see being yelled at and shit on as an opportunity for a sale. Like, it's ridiculous. But I actually really believe that every conflict is somebody bringing up something they think or feel, and if you can accept that lovingly, you can turn it into an opportunity for interaction and into an opportunity to understand a perspective that is clearly different from yours. Like, I don't think I'm a dick, so if they think I'm a dick, then they and I clearly have different perspectives on that issue.
Disagreement on our hands.
Yeah. But if I can understand their perspective as to why, then I can come out wiser, and they can feel listened to, and that's a great thing. So every conflict really is an opportunity, or we try to treat it that way anyway.
Excellent. Well, it reminded me, I guess, of how much, like we were saying earlier, how much clicks outrage generates, and how these political commentary spheres often seem to devolve into just, people yelling at each other for clicks, basically. And and just, I'm if you guys had kind of observed that phenomenon at all, and it sounds like maybe you have it, and that's part of what's motivated you to take the approach that you have to the project. So I think that's really refreshing. I think that kind of, like I said earlier, I think it was kind of a fad, and that it wasn't very sustainable. So I think there is a bit of a shift now in online commentary towards maybe less outrage, less sensation. But with the elections coming up, I don't have my fingers crossed for it to stay that way.
Yeah, like I do have my fingers crossed for it to stay that way, but I also recognize I don't know how likely that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, definitely what woke me up to, because yeah, I was seeing comment wars, I was seeing the outrage and the sensationalism, and that's sort of that was part of what motivated this series from my side. And the other part of it was that I sort of woke up, or I was trying to go to sleep actually one night, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's an election in October. I need to do something. We could have an Andrew Scheer majority, and I do not feel like that would be the best thing for this country. What can I do about this? And yeah, so it's, in a way, this series is very motivated by the coming election. Right. And as the election, like right now, we're getting people's opinions. But as the election goes closer, we do want to try to, talk to politicians and address this on a sort of a political level and try to keep politics more loving, at least when we cover it.
So what are your predictions so far for October based on your...
Yeah, of course.
Sorry, why does it say my Logitech microphone is disconnected? All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Slight technical blip. But,
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, back to the question. What are your predictions for federal election in October?
So we've been seeing a wave in the States and now in Ontario of people who are feeling dissatisfied with the status quo and reaching out for something fresh and different. And in the States, that was Trump, because he was like, hey, I'm not part of this establishment. I'm just this guy with a show. Like, I'm just, yeah.
It was very much like the anti-establishment candidate.
Exactly. I don't know how much Andrew Scheer is anti-establishment. I think a lot of people, I mean, it's hard to be in power. There are some things that I think Justin Trudeau did quite well. There are some things that I personally don't think he did very well. But with the Lavalin thing, I'm sensing that the Liberals have a hard race. And one of the things he promised was electoral reform so that everyone could actually vote for who they wanted. And then he didn't do that, which means that there may be a lot of ridings where people feel that they have to either vote Liberal or the Conservative will win. One of the things that I really want to try to push, and right now this is just in the idea phase, but we've got a video that we're working on, is the idea of community strategic voting or actual strategic voting, where instead of people sort of blasting forth into, well, I don't want a conservative, so I better vote Liberal, where communities get together, decide as a community for their riding which candidate they think is the best. And obviously it's probably going to be a room filled with people on the left because there's only one candidate for the right, so that's pretty easy for them. But people on the left get together and select the candidate that they think are really going to do a great job, and then everyone works together on getting that person elected. So that instead of it being a conservative majority with a Liberal second and almost no NDP and Green, we can have a situation where it is maybe it's a conservative minority government with a strong NDP presence, a strong Green Party presence, and a Liberal presence that is a lot less than it was previously. So I think part of the issue is that overall in this country we have a lot of people who would associate with what we call the left, but aren't as picky about whether they follow the NDP or the Liberal or the Green version of left. they're just afraid of conservatives.
Yeah.
So if we can back away from the fear of conservatives on the left side and instead get together as ridings to select someone and support them really hard, I think that we could, I mean, maybe we could even create a situation of an NDP and Green coalition government with the conservatives and the liberals sort of both much reduced in power. I don't know. I think that's what it's going to come down to. If it doesn't, if people don't adopt a sort of a riding-based community strategic voting, then I see it as being a conservative government with just because there will be a lot of ridings where people say, well, I'm tired of voting strategically, I'm going to vote Green. And then there are people who say, I am going to vote strategically and vote Liberal. And the result will be the left will be a mismatch and the conservatives will walk in with a majority.
Right.
So my prediction is either riding-based community strategic voting becomes a thing, which I'm going to try to make it a thing, or we might end up with a conservative majority.
Zach, do you have any predictions?
I'm hopeful for a liberal minority because I don't know, I don't think we need a anti-abortion guy as the prime minister. But I don't know if it could be. I think Michael has a point in saying, we could have a huge issue with the people voting left going to Green, NDP, and not wanting to vote for Liberal, and then we get screwed and have a conservative
Prime Minister
majority.
Scheer.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting to me that you and I say, we could get screwed and have a conservative majority with Prime Minister Scheer, and there are other people who are like, what do you mean screwed? Conservative Prime Minister Scheer is exactly who we want.
Yeah, they're like another round of Trudeau is the end of the world for some people.
Oh, totally. Although I do want to go back to your identity politics thing. I really think that part of the reason that we need to let go of that is that right now we have Andrew Scheer, who's under this conservative banner and anti-abortion, and there are people who believe in conservative values because they're afraid that the left is going to not take care of Canada's own, and they really don't trust the left, but who also don't want to have an anti-abortion prime minister. But because it's identity politics, they go, oh, well, we'll just vote conservative. If we can take away that identity piece from the politics, then people can be like, hey, you know what, Scheer, we like you, but we also need a candidate who is conservative and pro-abortion, or at least not anti-women's choice.
Right.
I think that's an important rebrand, actually, because it's not that you should be pro-abortion. No one's out there being like, hey, we all need more abortions in this world. It's being pro-choice, and I think we should start calling them anti-choice, not anti-abortion.
That's the technical term is pro-life, not anti-abortion.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Maybe that might just be me. Point is, the identity politics thing. If we can move away from that, then we can force our politicians to be more accountable to the people. Because if a bunch of conservatives stand up and say, Andrew Scheer, we'd be willing to vote for you, but we don't like your plan to burn gay people at the stake, then Andrew Scheer I made that up. I don't think that's part of his platform. But then we can force our politicians to shift their views to be accountable to what their supporters actually want, instead of the current situation where, because it's identity driven, Andrew Scheer says, well, I'm a conservative and here's my platform, and anyone who has conservative values either has to go, well, I'm just going to stay home this election, or, well, yeah, I'm going to go vote for Scheer because he's our conservative guy. So I really think we need to get away from identity politics so that we can tell our politicians what we want them to support instead of them telling us what they're supporting, and we just vote for them. So I really think we need to take back our politics and our political power, and getting rid of identity politics is going to be a step in that direction.
I totally agree with that. I think the effect of identity politics has really been nothing but divisive. And like you said at the outset, it's hasn't really led to ideal outcomes for anybody. So I think it's a really important point to make, and it's an important thing to tackle. Yeah. But
I don't know how.
just baby steps.
There. Yeah. Good.
But I did allude earlier that I was going to broach the topic of the toga. And I think maybe we got a hint as to the backstory of the toga with the old school Adidas tearaways. But that's just a suspicion on my part. So please, I know this is a radio show, so nobody quite knows what I'm talking about yet if you haven't seen the Canadian Love channel. But
if you haven't seen the Canadian Love channel, then you should probably go check out the Canadian Love channel.
Right away. Which will be linked in the description when this is on YouTube, so that you can find it with a single click. But yes,
thank you, Mother.
So, Michael, please, if you don't mind, what is with the toga?
I'm going to give the floor to Zac on this one, actually.
Oh, plot twist. Okay, Zac.
Yeah. So the tearaway pants kind of was like the precursor to the tearaway jacket that we use in the intros to all of our videos, because I kind of just really like the idea of having a funny catch when you start the video, like, oh, this is a weird man in a trend. Oh, he's in a toga now. But the toga is kind of like it's like a callback to Greco-Roman in like the birth of democracy, but at the same time it's like you don't want to talk politics in like a serious manner, so why not just have a strange man with his nipple partially showing? And
yeah, poor Zac has had to edit so much of my nipple. Yeah. But yeah, exactly that. Number one, it is kind of a gimmick, it's kind of funny, it's weird. The coat ripping off is kind of fun. But number two, we want people to feel comfortable and like things aren't being taken too seriously, and like they don't have to watch and censor themselves. They can just be who they are and talk about how they actually feel, because that's important so that we can get to the bottom of the iceberg, as we were saying.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to feel self-conscious when the person asking you the questions is wearing a Valley Village bedsheet wrapped around their body. So
I think there was a plaid toga that made an appearance, I think, at one point. That was very Canadian. I liked that.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got what was it? What Pride? I did like a rainbow one. Yeah. We did an event of a film premiere called Jesus Meets the Gay Man, and I did a pink one for that. I've got a red one with a white stripe down the middle that we used for that I wore last night because it was Canada Day. So we've got a bunch of. It's not like it's not like a grody white sheet. Like each one is silk or plaid or
fun colors.
Fun color, yeah.
I gave Michael a toga for his birthday yesterday. That's a kind of like a bright rainbow. Mm-hmm. He has it on him right now. It's like a blue, orange, green kind of thing. It's very nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, and happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, great time last night. Great time.
Awesome. Did you guys manage to get some Canada Day footage?
Was
it an off day? Was it a holiday?
It was a holiday, and it was a holiday because I
shouldn't be working on your birthday, I guess.
If you leave me to my own devices, like if no one else has a camera, I'll just put my phone on. Like I love doing this so much that it is hard to get me to stop. And Zac and Lily and Siobhan were like, Michael, it's your birthday. We're not gonna work. And I was like, okay, what if we just film this? And they're like, Michael, you have a problem, and it's your birthday. We're going to take a break. We're just going to have a casual barbecue. And I was like, okay, what if we film a roast of me at this barbecue? And they were like, Michael, we'll bring the camera just in case, but you have a problem, and we're just going to hang out. So instead we, I have a 12-year-old. We all had a Nerf gun fight.
Awesome.
It was a great time. Yeah.
Cool.
Big fan of Nerf guns. So was Zach. Zach brought Nerf guns, actually, and that's what sparked the situation. So yeah, it was a really great time. Although I've realized that maybe down the road, I want to make a massive Canadian Love Canada Day party that becomes a massive yearly event and is just a chance for people to get together and talk about politics lovingly and then drink and watch fireworks. So, that's a long game, though. That's maybe next year.
Cool. Well, excuse me. Sorry. It sounds like you guys have a lot of ideas, which is awesome, and some very interesting ones and some very fun sounding ones too.
Yeah, thank you. Part of the problem is that I love ideas, and I'll just blast them out, and Zach will be like, "Okay, so we're still working on those 4." And I'll be like, okay, the next one, we should put this on a rocket, and we're flying to the moon during the interview.
We're going to need a drone, and yeah.
Yeah, and Zach's like, okay, well, I will try to implement this. Do you have a rocket? Because I don't. We should do one on a boat. Okay, great. Do you have a boat?
So I can get a boat.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I do have access to a boat.
Can we do one on a boat?
We can do one on a boat one day.
Yes! Okay, I'm really excited for this boat interview. All right, good. So we're going to do one on a boat.
Excellent. And I will be expecting trains and planes to follow.
I can only hope, yeah. Do you have a train, Zach?
No. I don't think so. I'll have to look.
Okay, yeah. Oh my goodness, what if we did Calvin's in the Haunt?
I suggested that, and you said yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, great job. This is our life.
Another iron in the fire.
Yeah, Zach actually owns a haunted house thing.
Yeah.
No way.
That's pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, are there any interviews or events coming up over the summer that you guys would like to give a shout out to or a little preview of?
One thing that we want to start doing, and I mean this is ideal situation, but what we want to do is set up a tour where we go to a couple of Canadian cities, and in each one we do a massive debate. We pick up, like, we go there, maybe we interview we come to Ottawa, maybe we do an interview with you or someone you've interviewed, and then at the end of the night we hold we do like a series of debates where every city has a different topic, and we pack a bar and try to have a loving discussion with as many people as possible about a hot topic. So, the pro-choice one is probably going to be our first one. So that's something that's going to take a little bit of money, at least for gas and Airbnb or a place to put our tents. Yeah. So we'll see, but that is something we are really hoping to blast into maybe in August, end of August. Yeah, so we'll see, but that's something we're hoping to do is take the show on the road. So if that happens, we will be promoting that in whatever city it is, and then inviting people to join us for the event.
Awesome. That sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Other than that, just, more interviews, more events, and that's...
We're hoping to go to one of the Yellow Vest rallies and actually get some right-wing or conservative points of view, so that, because we got kicked out of Ford Fest, I think we got kicked out of Ford Fest like 3 times that day.
No, that's actually true.
Yeah.
We went in, and then as we were buying our tickets, I started making conversation with the person selling us tickets, who was this really level-headed, loving, intelligent person who happened to be conservative, but was also able to recognize, like, yeah, I'm part of this government. Here's some things that I really like about them that I don't think you know about. And I was like, no, I didn't know about those things. And she was also like, there are things that I don't like about them. So that was very interesting. But then security came and asked us to leave, and she stepped in and was like, no, these guys are cool. They're here to interview people lovingly, and like she allowed us to get to the second part. So then we continued forwards, and then we
set up for our first interview.
Yeah, we finally set up, and then the media guy comes over and kicks us out again and says, basically, like, you need to go to the front desk and see if you can get them to give you a media pass. Otherwise, you can't come in here. So then we went to the front desk, and I think he said that knowing full well that there was no way they were going to do that. We went to the front desk, and we were like, hey, can we get a media pass? And they were like, well, are you the CBC? And we were like, nope. And they were like, are you, they listed off a couple of other ones, and we were like, no, we're a small YouTube channel called Canadian Love, but we're really loving, and we really just want to be really interview people very lovingly and understand. And they were like, no. So then, we went to the parking lot, did our interviews there, and then, they did invite us. To their credit, they didn't let our show in, but they were like, you guys can come in and enjoy the event. You can't film anything. So we did our interviews in the parking lot, and then we were like, well, we're going to go in for a burger because they had free food that looked delicious.
It was very good.
And yeah, oh god, great food. So then we went in, and we left. The media guy had been watching us in the parking lot, so he met us at the door and was like, "You're done, right? You're not filming anything?" And we were like, "No." And you're like, "You're not. Where are your cameras?" And we were like,
"Are you sure?" Yeah.
He was like, "All right, fine. Enjoy your day." So then we were in there, and someone came up and started talking to us about, because I was wearing a bright red toga, that makes conversation, and we were in line, and some of the conservative volunteers were asking us as they were serving our food, and we were having a fun conversation about, well, here's sort of our bent. So then we happen to carry business cards for our show, so I took one out and handed it to the guy serving us, and then the media guy came over and was like, "No, you can't do that.
Panhandling."
Yeah, no handing out business cards. No talking about your show. There's nothing you're and we were like, he was like, you're handing out literature, and I was like, well, it's not really. I mean, it's just like our YouTube channel, and like it's a card with our YouTube channel. That's really it. And he's like, no literature.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, but again, and he was trying to do his job and ensure that Doug Ford didn't have a smear campaign on him by some leftist news source. Yeah. But it's a shame that he was operating from a place of fear. And this is exactly why we were there, is to lovingly interview people who disagree with some of our other viewers, and
exactly to combat that fear that's become the knee-jerk reaction for so many people.
Yeah, definitely. A big thing for us is the fear versus gratitude mindset, and fear versus love, and how people just make better decisions when they approach things from a place of gratitude than from a place of fear. And that's been documented now in business and in self-help. And we believe that that's true for politics, and that if we can get people to approach Canadian politics from a place of gratitude for the fact that we have this great democracy, and from a place of love for our country and other Canadians, instead of a place of fear, that would actually, like, if we could actually make that happen, that would itself swing the tide of politics and make Canada a much better place. It's a pretty lofty goal, Can we make all Canadians approach politics lovingly instead of with fear? I don't know. It might be hard.
Go big or go home, right? I mean...
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I've kept you guys for quite a while. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. There's
Martha,
maybe...
Thank you so much for having us on here. Really appreciate the work that you're doing, and the work that you're doing to unpack people and hear their sort of human stories. Really agree with your vision on that. and we really appreciate getting to talk to you. This has been really, really fun for us.
Yeah, it's been great, guys. I've really enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'll give you one more chance just to let everyone know where they can find Canadian Love Project and anything else you want to give a plug to. Any other projects that you guys are working on separately? Feel free to let everyone know.
Yeah, I mean, Canadian Love on YouTube. If you search Canadian Love on YouTube, it will come up. If you search Canadian Love Show on Instagram, that's our Instagram handle. I think our Facebook is Canadian Love 35.
Yep.
Yeah, and we're always really open to talking to new people. So if you have a story that you really want to have told, for example, I mean, he's not going to talk, but I met a conservative in a bar, and he was telling me how he gets threatened to be beaten up by liberals. And he had this actually really fascinating story. And he said he didn't want to come on our show because he was afraid of flack. But if anyone, has a story, no matter what their story is that they're willing to tell us, please reach out on email, canadianlove35@gmail.com. That's our email.
I love the 35 though.
Well, yeah.
That's on me.
Fair enough. I'm 31, not 35. I'm our old man. But yeah. So that's a big. I mean, other projects, like we're actually producing a short film called. Well, I'm not going to give the name yet, but because we haven't filmed it yet. But we're filming this coming weekend, and it's a zombie romance, and yeah. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That'll hopefully be in festivals, and other projects are going to come up as we go.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, definitely stay in touch and stay on the lookout for that project and all the Canadian Love stuff. And thanks again, guys. We'll have to check back in with you maybe after the election.
Yeah, that would be very interesting, and we would love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. And
Martha, thank you again so much. This has been fantastic, and you are great.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I really enjoyed it. That was awesome.